This is what I've come up with. I've got the two on the screen. We'll see what's going on. On the right is President Trump. On the left is Joe Biden on ABC. Now, what's hilarious about Trump being on NBC is last night he bashed the fuck out of NBC, which ironically is the network that set all this in motion that gave him the show The Apprentice, which is the entire reason we're having to put up with him right now. So Trump's got Savannah Guthrie. I believe, does Joe Biden have George Stephanopoulos over here? Is that who we got?
Nicholas Fedden, he's from Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. That's close to here in Philadelphia.
No, well.
You're a Democrat.
There should be a plan when we have the vaccine.
I want to be fair. I don't want to stay on Trump the whole time, but I mean, the dynamic with Savannah and Trump is probably far more interesting than what Stephanopoulos and Biden are going to do over here.
Vaccines, they say, have a very positive...
He probably will.
And they're going to affect positively 85% of the American public. Or there's others...
He already doesn't look happy. Did you see that face he was making? Holy shit.
It depends.
That was a scowl.
The nature of the vaccine, when it comes out, and how it's being distributed.
Oh, fuck. Let's go back to Blowhard over here.
It happened because of China, and you have to get that and understand supremacy. I denounce it. You start off with something else. Let's go. Keep asking me these questions.
I do have one more.
Let me just tell you what I do hear about it is they are.
I mean, just look at the difference in the demeanor.
Your home, you can pay your mortgage. You got $20 million.
I am no fan of Joe Biden, but this is refreshing.
Raise the corporate tax, you're going to raise taxes on the wealthy. Is it wise to do even that when the economy is as weak as it is right now? Another 900,000 people.
A boring-ass, wonky conversation.
Did analysis of my detailed analysis of my tax plan and my economic plan. They said, I will in 4 years, Moody's, Wall Street, said I will create 18.6 million new jobs, good-paying jobs, number one. Number two, and I'll increase, the GDP will grow by $1 trillion more than it would under Trump, and 7 million more jobs than under Trump. And
if you're not aware, like,
allow people to get back.
A lot of financial institutions are coming out and backing Biden and saying that, yes, the Democrats and their clean sweep would be much better for the economy. Goldman Sachs said it this last week.
The wealthiest billionaires in the world, in the nation, they made another $700 billion. $700 billion. He talks about a V-shaped...
You're correct. The stance of the interviewers is much different, but the stance is a direct response to who they're interviewing.
And if you're at the bottom...
You know, it's like I said last night, it wasn't a debate with old Gord. Like, you can't... To have debated him would have said that...
Kidding aside,
he had something valid to say and bring to the discussion.
And George, the way out,
and much like Savannah is doing right now, you just have to confront them with their bullshit.
We have these 4 crises happening all at once, and one helps the other. For example, we're going to invest a great deal of that money into infrastructure. And to a green infrastructure.
She looks kind of exacerbated, Savannah over here on the right, already.
Highways we're building, and all highways. We bail these suckers out. They're not liable for any of the money.
I'm really enjoying seeing Trump's face without him talking and seeing that scowl and trying to think about what's going through his mind at the moment.
No, not at all. Garnet Valley, Pennsylvania, Republican who voted for President Trump last time.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Vice President Biden.
This is interesting. What's up, Karen?
What's your view on the crime bill that you wrote in 1994, which showed prejudice against minorities? Where do you stand today on that?
Well, first of all, things have changed drastically. That crime bill, when it voted, the Black Caucus voted for it. Every black mayor supported it across the board. And it didn't. The crime bill itself did not have mandatory sentences except for 2 things. It had 3 strikes and you're out, which I voted against in the crime bill. But it had a lot of other things in it that turned out to be both bad and good. I wrote the Violence Against Women Act. That was part of it. The assault weapons ban and other things that were good. What I was against was giving states that's more money for prison systems that they could build, state prison systems. And you have 93 out of every 100 people in jail now is in a state prison, not in a federal prison, because they built more prisons. I also wrote into that bill a thing called drug courts. I don't believe anybody should be going to jail for drug use. They should be going into mandatory rehabilitation. We should be building rehab centers to have these people housed. We should wipe out, we should decriminalize marijuana, wipe out.
I feel like the lady is very deflated that she wasn't expecting a good answer back to that.
Saying there is no
she thought she had him.
That you have to reveal relative to the use of marijuana. And so there's a lot of things, but in addition to that, we got to change the system. I joined with a group of people in the House to provide for changing the system from punishment to rehabilitation. Along with a guy named Arlen Specter, who you may remember, I wrote the Second Chance Act.
In the meantime, an awful lot of people were jailed for minor drug crimes after the
Exactly right.
Was it a mistake to support it?
Yes, it was. But here's where the mistake came. The mistake came in terms of what the states did locally. What we did federally, we said it was, and you remember, George, it was all about the same time for the same crime.
Oh, come on, Joe. I was getting ready to give you props for taking responsibility.
10 circuit courts of appeals. Took some really brilliant lawyers working for me in judiciary. We did a study. And it was occurring in the late 80s into the 90s. It went down, and fewer African Americans were arrested.
The reason for the drop in crime is because that was like 20-something years after Roe v. Wade. So a good chunk of that was children that would have been prone to a life of crime, unwanted children, had been aborted. Then there's also, we took lead out of paint. 40 years before that.
Took place and things happened.
That had a great effect on lowering the crime rate.
She could call and say,
not anything that Joe Biden did in his crime bill.
Reveal it was her, because they know if she knew that in fact they'd never report the crime. She'd never report. So it actually started to come down. What happened? They eliminated the funding for community policing. Community policing doesn't mean more people coming in up-armored Humvees and swarming like that. When they did, it turned out that by the time we got to the late 90s, the crime had come down so much, and the mayors and everybody asked the question, where do you want me to spend the money? They say, well, only 1% thought violent crime was a problem. It was as high as 22%.
Right now we have a systemic problem. How do you get the kind of policing, prevent the kind of policing?
You have to change the way in which they police.
He hit the nail on the head right there with the militarization of the police. How do you spend the money? You got to keep those contractors that are making all those body armors and the up-armored tanks that the police are using now.
To sit down.
You got to keep them making ammunition, so you got to send the ammunition somewhere.
Up with significant reforms that need to take place in communities. You have to bring them.
I wouldn't say anybody's tanking.
One of the things I've observed is
Trump is being Trump, Biden's being Biden. It's exactly what you would have expected.
A firefighter or a priest.
We'll go back over to Trump is awfully angry and has been very confrontational with Savannah Guthrie.
She voted for Clinton in 2016, but recently changed her registration from Democrat to Independent. She says she's truly undecided. Her name's Becky Lightman. Hello, Becky. What's your question?
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you. So, corporate tax rates are a hot button issue, and you have cut corporate tax rates, and your opponent Joe Biden is planning to raise them.
Right.
A lot of Americans think that corporations don't pay their share of taxes and want to see those tax rates increase. Right. What do you say to those Americans to maybe tell them why you want the corporate tax rate lower and why that helps them?
It's a great question. We've created more jobs than this country has ever created. We're up to 100.
That is not true.
Jobs. We were never even close to
I'm not here to fact check. I'm just here to say smart ass things. But
jobs. Companies are pouring
that's
into
not true.
Because of the tax rate. And if Biden comes in and raises taxes on everybody, including middle income taxes, which he wants to do, you will blow this thing and you'll end up with a depression, the likes of which you've never had. That's what's going to happen. We have something that's really good. The reason we're coming back so strong is because
we're getting ready to enter a depression the likes of which we've never had.
companies are moving into Michigan, into Ohio, into South Carolina, and North Carolina just today. So what's happening is they're coming in.
I mean, what's new?
Taxes, our corporate taxes were the highest in the world, and now they're among the lower.
But I look forward to going back to the teeny lies where I've got to, like, point out the little shit around the edges with Joe Biden instead of just like, no, what he's saying is completely untrue over here.
Middle income tax package, but it's a great question. And if he comes along and raises rates, all those companies that are coming in, they will leave the U.S. so fast your head will spin. We can't let that happen.
On the subject of taxes, as you know, the New York Times has obtained, it says, years of your tax returns, among other things. It says that you have debts.
The audio on NBC really sucks ass, and it's bothering me.
In the next 4 years. The question is, on behalf of voters, who do you owe for?
My audio for my stream sounds better than the audio on one of the oldest cable network, or not cable, broadcast networks.
A lot of real estate. I have real estate. You know a lot of it, okay? Right down the road, Doral. Big stuff, great stuff. I'm very when I decided to run, I'm very under-levered, fortunately, but I'm very under-levered. I have a very, very small...
Oh, I know what it is. It's because it's Trump. Nobody wanted to get close to him to put the microphone on him. They were like far away from him, like, here, Mr. President, let me put your mic on.
These great properties all over the world, and frankly,
afraid that motherfucker is still contagious.
In San Francisco, I don't love what's happening to San Francisco.
Well, do I hear you right? It sounds like you're saying $400 million isn't that much.
One of the biggest office buildings.
But are you confirming that yes, you do owe some $400 million?
What I'm saying is that it's a tiny percentage of my net worth.
That sounds like yes.
And you'll see that soon because we're doing things, We've given, I think it's 108 or 112 pages of financial detail.
The Corona grab.
Elections, and we have to file as the president, as any politician, you have to file. Nobody ever looks at that. When they do, they see how incredible the company is, but more importantly...
So wait a minute, is Leslie Jones on some game show now? Is she not on Saturday Night Live anymore?
Very, very small. It's called mortgages. Yeah. People have a house, they put a mortgage.
Any foreign bank, any foreign entity?
Not that I know of, but I will probably, because it's so easy to solve, and if you'd like to do, I will let you know who I owe whatever small amount of money. I want to
say... Yeah. Show us your taxes. That'll let us know.
It's very straight. It's very, very straight. But it's a tiny percentage of the worth. Did you ever hear the expression under-levered?
Yeah.
I am extremely under-levered.
Well, here's the thing. You could clear this up tonight by just releasing your tax returns yourself.
Exactly.
That's what I understand. I think people are just wondering.
As you know,
you're the only...
It turned out that I am under-audited.
You are correct. It's like everyone's using the same mic. Like there's just one boom mic hanging down.
Not being under-audited previously, and so did other people at NBC, and I am under-audited. So that was solved. That's good. I am under-audited. No person in their right mind would release prior to working out the deal with the IRS. And I'll go a step further. I'm treated very badly by the IRS. They treat me very, very badly. You have people...
Do you know who is in charge of the IRS?
Very badly.
At this moment, it is Donald J. Trump.
But we're under audit. They like to change the game, change the rules, do everything. You saw what they did with the Tea Party people. You saw what they did with the religious group.
But to be clear, there is no law or rule that prohibits you from releasing your tax returns.
Except common sense and intelligence and having lawyers and stuff. Because I would love to release them, and as soon as we come to a conclusion, I will release them, and very gladly. But if you go to elections, and if you take a look, you'll see 112, I think it's 112. It talks about the income, which is rather massive. It talks about all of the properties. They have them listed. You can never learn.
His entire income is just his basing his worth off of his name and his name value and his brand.
My son is here. They run the company.
Here comes Smokey.
It also says that you paid $750 in taxes in the year you were elected. Is that true or not?
It's a statutory number. It's a statutory.
But is that true?
I think it's a filing number. You pay $750. It's a filing or filing.
What is he talking about?
I don't know. I can tell you this.
And that was the first year he paid any taxes in several years.
As you know, they have to go to jail. It's illegal. But their numbers were wrong.
Thank you.
But let me tell you what else. I don't owe money to any of these sinister people. This has been going on for years now.
Please, ABC, come back. I want to go back to Joe Biden.
It turned out to be that Hillary Clinton and the Democrats were dealing with Russia, not me. It's a whole hoax. So I would not mind at all saying who it is, but it's a very small...
That's not true. The Durham report never happened. They've closed that investigation because they're not going to charge anybody because they found nothing.
It's extremely underlevered, and it's levered with normal banks. Not a big deal.
All right, let's take a break. We'll get more voter questions right after this.
Oh, thank God.
With Facebook Shop.
Oh, shoo.
From the Constitution Center in Philadelphia.
I have Trump fatigue really bad.
And the Supreme Court is our next topic. The questioner, Nathan Osborne of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Democrat.
What up, Nathan?
Hi, George, Mr. Vice President.
Hey, Nathan.
Our country's first Supreme Court gave its first rulings just 2 blocks from here, from 1791 to 1800, and it's become more polarized since then. Merrick Garland didn't get a hearing for all of 2016, and Amy Coney Barrett's being pushed through at the last minute, even though millions have already voted. So what do you think about ideas from people
Seriously,
like
man.
others to put in place safeguards that will help ensure more long-term balance and stability? And what do you say to LGBTQ Americans?
And in 2016, I was talking about how much I always liked Trump. I liked watching the Trump show. Nope, sick of it. Nope, take it back. No more.
The last point, work my way back. I think there's...
If I never see that motherfucker again in my life, if he never, he's not going to pop up on Dave and let Dave make fun of him anymore. So I'm so done with him.
I've been going around the country, Florida, and anyway. And, my reading...
The days of fun Trump are over.
What the judge said was she didn't answer very many questions at all. And I don't even think she has laid out much of a judicial philosophy in terms of the basis upon which she thinks are there unenumerated rights in the Constitution and the list. So, number one. So I think there's great reason to be concerned for the LGBT community, something I've fought very hard for a long time to make sure there's equality across the board. Number two, I think that also health care overall is very much in jeopardy as a consequence of the president's going to go directly after this election directly to the Supreme Court within a month to try to get Obamacare wiped out after 10 million people have already lost their insurance.
It's one of the main reasons they're wanting to ram her through so fast.
Plus 100 million people.
The SCOTUS has said they're going to take up the case right after the election.
I don't think it's appropriate. I think the Constitution implies. There's no provision in the Constitution. My problem is I made a mistake of teaching constitutional law for 21 years.
The court didn't want to rule before the election.
The Constitution implies.
I think the court would be very happy issuing a 4-4 decision and kicking it back down and letting the ACA stand.
Of the Senate and
the president's president for all 4 years, isn't he?
No, he is. But once an election begins, by implication, it is inconsistent with the constitutional principles in my view.
That's just absolute bullshit, but that's what the Republicans said in 2016. Like, you make the hypocrisy argument, don't make the argument like you're the one standing for the law.
Should have been held until this election is over.
As if Republicans care about you calling them out on hypocrisy.
Who wins this election? He should be able to.
But how about that question of expanding the court? Here's what you said exactly 1 year ago tonight at a Democratic debate. You said, I would not get into court packing. I would not pack the court. That's not what you're saying now.
No, he said that like earlier today.
Reason enough to rethink your position?
What is the nomination? What I wanted to do, George, if I had answered the question directly, then all the focus would be on what's Biden going to do if he wins, instead of on, is it appropriate what is going on now? And it should stay, this is the thing that the president loves to do, always take our eye off the ball. What's at stake? One of the things Pete has suggested is, and there's a number of constitutional scholars have suggested.
There are
at least 4 or 5 options that are available to determine whether or not you can.
He is going to get incredibly embarrassed here in
consistent, arguably, with the
18 days?
I have not been a fan
18
of
days.
Court packing, because I think it just generates what will happen. Whoever wins, it just keeps moving in a way that is inconsistent.
And when a narcissist takes that kind of blow to the ego,
well, I'm not a fan. I
don't know that he's going to want to pop up again.
Not how he wins, but how it's handled. how it's handled. But there's a number of things that are going to be coming up, and there's going to be a lot of discussion about other alternatives as well.
What does that mean, how it's handled? How will that determine
well,
whether you're
for example, there's actually real live debate on the floor. If people are really going to be able to have a time to go through this, I don't know anybody who's gone on the floor and that's been a controversy.
Okay, so here's the deal, though, is like Joe Biden is not going to pack the court. He's not wanting to say that he doesn't want to pack the court, which he is on record saying, as George Stephanopoulos brought up, because he doesn't want to turn off people like me who have been on here. Like I did a complete about face, like, okay, I'll vote for Biden. Okay, I'm down with it. Just because, like, seeing them side by side right here, Biden is a breath of fresh air. I want to go back to wonky policy discussions.
If they vote,
I don't even want to turn the volume back up on that chode on the right side.
What happens from that point on?
You said so many times during the campaign, all through the course of your career, it's important to level with
it is,
American
but George,
people.
if I say,
but ultimately, Biden is he has respect for the institution.
It won't be about what's going on now, the improper way they're proceeding.
But don't voters have a right to know where you stand?
They do have a right to know where they stand, and they'll have a right to know where I stand before they vote.
So you'll come out with a clear position before Election Day?
Yes, depending on how they handle this. But look, what you should do is you got to make sure you vote. And vote for a senator.
See, he's wanting it to seem like that's on the table
constitutional interpretation
to not turn people like me off.
President who think is more
Because his favorability rating has gone up and up and up since that first debate.
But if you oppose my position, vote for Trump. Vote for a Republican who shares that view. But that's your opportunity to get involved.
That's exactly right. I would like him to come out and say that, yes, I will consider packing the court
stay and stay
because of this, and this that the Republicans have done.
As a disaffected Republican, you cast a write-in vote for John Kasich in 2016. You're going to vote against President Trump.
But he's made a bet that he's going to pill off Republicans. And if he says that he's going to pack the court, that sounds radical, like he's giving into the radical left. And he doesn't want to portray that.
I'll be darned.
And some of his closest allies.
So he's trying to, like, really thread the needle right now.
And Senator Ted Kennedy. Sadly, today we have highly partisan and dysfunctional governance, and I believe
he is being dodgy, but like it's for the reason that I said, and that's the problem with politics: is it comes off as disingenuous.
The temptation to exact revenge.
And it seems like you're slimy, but like he's making a very calculated decision.
Bipartisanship, civility, and honor to our democracy.
As written by a fellow who won the Pulitzer Prize for a book he wrote about the presidency, he said, I doubt whether Biden is really Irish. He doesn't hold a grudge. In politics,
the second stimulus is a whole nother. If Trump could right now, he'd give you 10 grand.
The second point I'd make is everybody.
The problem is Mitch McConnell in the Senate. They've pretty much said nothing. No, we're not going to pass anything because Pelosi and Trump agreed to yet another deal today that they think the Senate might pass. Doubtful.
By the way your father was and Tip was and others. You don't question another man or woman's motive. You can question their judgment, but not their motive.
Well, I've heard him tell this story before, and I disagree with him 100%.
I stand up and I say, we need an infrastructure bill, Senator, but I tell you what, you're in the pocket of the cement industry. But let's see what we can do. You can't get anywhere.
But somebody that is bought and paid for by big finance, health care, like Joe Biden, has to say something like that. Oh, you can attack my motives.
Listen, what I will be doing if I'm elected president, the first
humans are slimy.
You can ask if they tell you your dad's
and politicians are human.
I'm going to pick up the phone and call them and say, let's get together. We got to figure out how we're going to move forward here because there's so many things we really do agree on. And with Trump,
I think the attacks on Nancy Pelosi, that's part of the misogyny.
Republicans who don't do exactly what he says gets taken away. There's going to be, I promise you, between 4 and 8 Republican senators are going to be willing to move on things.
Misogyny goes over well with the GOP. Pelosi is a lot less likable figure than Joe Biden. Joe Biden's hard to attack.
I've been working on a thing called the
I
cure.
mean, they're trying their damnedest.
to cancer.
But like my friend said, like they dropped a bunch of pictures of Hunter with a crack pipe in his like mouth, looking all cool and shit. You're trying to make us not like him? Like, come on.
Research and development on cancer alternatives, NIH, and particularly specific cancer initiatives. And we only had at the time, I think it was 111 or 114, whatever it was, votes in the House. I don't hold the exact number. And we had fewer than 40 in the Senate. But after he was elected, I got those people together as vice president, and we sat down and we worked it out. And we ended up getting it passed.
This is totally going to go on another half hour, isn't it?
And 94 votes in the Senate. And at
The
end
debate
of
was
the
supposed to be
day,
an hour and a half.
Because it had to do with the Biden cancer moonshot I've been working on. Mitch McConnell stood up, and I was presiding officer, and moved to name the bill after my deceased son, Bo, who had just died. So there are ways to bring this together.
But how about the question of political accountability? And is there some tension between that and...
Oh, great. Joe Biden's talking about how great a person Mitch McConnell is. That makes me want to vote for him.
By President Trump. What
See,
would
Joe Biden has
do with that evidence?
What the Biden Justice Department...
he's worked a good strategy by not saying anything. Because the more he talks, the more I'm going to be like, yeah, I remember what I don't like about Joe
Who should be
Biden.
prosecuted. They are not my lawyers. They're not my personal lawyers.
So you're not going to rule it in?
Exactly, makes it more relatable. And when he said the thing about addiction during the debate, that one points with me
Understand the
too.
law like
And that's another thing, like human empathy. We need somebody that has human empathy in the presidency.
As if it's your own law firm. You don't own that Justice Department.
And
You
honestly,
people you can, and you
Joe Biden might have the most empathy of any president since Carter.
remember any Republican president going out there or former Democratic president.
Very true.
Prosecute him. Ever hear that? Or by the way, I'm being sued because a woman's accused me of rape. Represent me. Represent me. Personally represent me in the state of New York on my not allowing my tax returns. What's that all about? What is that about?
Got to take another break. We'll be right back.
Oh, God.
The executive power shall be vested.
I put it off, but here we go.
I got them funded. They were on a year-to-year basis. They could have been put out of business. As soon as our country had a little bad year, they would have said, I'm sorry, we're not going to fund you. I got them 10-year funding and financing, and more than they even asked for. I became very friendly with a lot of the heads. But we've done more.
His voice is just so grating now.
But criminal justice reform.
I'm sorry. We'll go back to Biden when he comes back.
President Obama and Biden never even
Because
tried.
the interesting thing about Trump was the beginning and the dynamic with Savannah Guthrie.
I'm very proud of it.
Like now, it's the same fucking shit.
Because of what I've
I'm
done.
ready for it to be over. 18 days.
I'm very proud of it.
Let's go to our next question. We have Paulette Dale. She leans slightly to Biden. She voted for Clinton in 2016. She's registered as a Republican. Paulette, what's your question?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
I have to say, you have a great smile. So,
Wow.
you're so handsome when you smile.
And that gets an applause line? Hold.
Immigrants to the United States.
We want people to come into our country. They have to come in legally, but we are working very hard.
And I think the Trump fatigue is a real thing, and we're going to see it in the election. They were predicting, like the RNC was predicting him to lose by 5 to 7 million votes. I wouldn't doubt that it's 10 million votes.
There are, under your administration, no new applicants are allowed. And in fact, the DACA recipients now have to renew every year as opposed to every 2 years. So in fact, the DACA program has been curtailed by your administration.
Well, what happened is because of the pandemic, much changed on the immigration front. Mexico is heavily infected, as you know, and we've made it very, very difficult to come in because of the pandemic and other reasons, and crime. But we have a very strong border right now, and we have to keep it that way. But we want people to come into our country, but they have to come in through a merit system, and they have to come in legally.
I'm not the only one watching the commercials on ABC, am I?
What happened is because of the pandemic.
As well as our audience in hot Miami and all of you watching at home.
So, wow, like, that was substantially shorter than Biden. Like,
in a 2012,
you guys all we saw Biden taking a question
politics
and talking while they were still doing the intro over on NBC.
Waterways from the Commonwealth to the Gulf. Fracking has made
So the Trump campaign was like, yeah, we'll do it, but it needs to be very abbreviated. But they only took, what, 4 questions, 5 questions?
Have already begun to transition people